Well, Jason, last week, and again, everyone, comments and questions in the live chat. If you have any angles on this you would like us to dissect, uh, Oklahoma not going to the SEC in 2025, moved up as we anticipated and talked about several times to 2024. So it's one last go around for Oklahoma in the Big 12 here in 23, and then it's on to the SEC. So maybe a little bit more sense of urgency in getting this team prepared and this program prepared for uh, taking on better competition week to week.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Mark. I think, in to your point, this is something that we've discussed at length, obviously, throughout the last year, and I don't think either of us thought that there would be a situation where Oklahoma and Texas would probably continue to stand pat in the Big 12 until 2025. But even last week or the week before, when I think there was a report that came out that looked like that Oklahoma and Texas weren't going to be able to leave early, and it was going to be 2025. That the I think particularly Fox, but I think the networks. It was reported the next networks weren't super thrilled with kind of what some of the decisions that had been made related to Oklahoma and Texas trying to move over early, and then I think what it was a day, maybe the next day that they announced that Oklahoma and Texas had met an agreement to go in 2024, and so I think it's something that we thought would happen. I mean, and as we discussed it further, we knew that with everything going on with the Big Ten, I think probably made that a little bit more urgent, just in terms of not necessarily the viability of the SEC whatsoever, but UCLA, and USC bring still maybe not necessarily always the greatest fan support in terms of in person, but like the TV sets and the eyeballs that would bring to the Big Ten would be a significant upgrade from where they were previously, and didn't really think, if at all possible, that the SEC and the ESPN and whoever was ultimately involved in a large part of that decision making would be able to get Oklahoma and Texas in there as soon as possible. So I think in one respect, obviously this is very much financially driven. I think the decision just to move over was very financially driven, but I think it's interesting looking at, to your question, Mark. It's interesting looking at where I think Oklahoma was at this point last year. I think a lot of us, on maybe even on the outside looking in, but even a lot of us that were had some had some knowledge within the program itself, thought that Oklahoma was much better positioned to move to the SEC than maybe they were a couple of years ago. And fast forward to this year at this time, maybe not quite as much in terms of being ready based on what the product on the field was this year. So I think it's interesting, and I don't know that Oklahoma's going to get of a ton of that just being prepared for the SEC this year with the schedule. Yeah, you've got a couple of new opponents that you're playing. You got the BYU game late in the year, Cincinnati early on in the year with going to Cincinnati. I think those are obviously very interesting matchups. But I think it's the financial side of it is obviously big, but I think obviously it remains to be seen. But I think it'll be interesting to see, once Oklahoma is in the SEC next year, what type of lumps will the Sooners take in year one. And obviously that's a little bit depending on what the schedule looks like, in terms of what those rotational opponents are going to be, and what those consistent opponents are each and every year. But yeah, it'll be interesting, and the fact that Oklahoma's had a really good recruiting class this year, top five, number four to be exact, that helps. But I think you're going to need to stockpile a few recruiting classes together. So yeah, I think it's very intriguing to see what Oklahoma will look like, and I think maybe fans are a little bit more willing to understand what that's going to look like after this year. This past year, this is a season that Oklahoma has not been through in a long, long time. I think 99 was the latest. 98 or 99 was the latest in terms of the win loss record that's comparable, and so that could be something that could be something similar you could see in the SEC for the first couple of years. So I think this is a very excuse me. I think this is a very pivotal year for Oklahoma to hopefully get back on track just a little bit. I don't think there's certainly no expectations that this team at this point will compete for a conference championship or a national championship maybe not yet, potentially the conference side of it, but not yet. But I think a lot of people are very interested to see what's the what's the improvement from year one to year two under this Brent Venables program.